Hello and good morning, Mary Kay. How are you doing today?
Hello, Errol. I'm doing really well. It's great to talk to you. How are you?
Absolutely fantastic. They have been running advertisements of your podcast all weekend on iHeartRadio channels across the country. And it's like, I would sit there and I'd hear it. I'd go, oh my God, I get to share a conversation with Mary Kay this coming Monday.
That's so exciting. I feel so famous. Thank you for telling me that.
Well, the way that you bring the listener into the storyline, because, I mean, you know, we hear the true crime stories and stuff like that, and then you give us that twist inside that promo that you do. And it's like, oh, well, Mary Kay is up to something. Where did this seed even come from?
So the idea for the podcast was actually a pretty creative collaboration. Diversion and I both were fascinated with the true crime stories, both that we have heard a lot of, and then some of them that were a little bit off the beaten path. But the ones that are the most familiar, we like to provide a new perspective, typically of a woman involved in the case that may not have gotten the story or the narrative attention that, you know, we could give. So it's really fun, especially when we're or I say fun, what I mean is fascinating, I think. When we hear a story and then we learn that behind the scenes there was this woman pulling the strings the whole time, whether like as a white hat or as the evil genius. Both of them are equally fascinating to me. So I love exploring that perspective.
It's almost like a modern day puzzle, and you're inviting us, the listener, to step inside your walk through trying to solve all this.
Thank you. Yes, I do love taking it from a narrative perspective, because to me, like, so much journalism is just the facts, ma'am. And that's what it should be, you know, most of the time. It's like the cold hard facts, the undisputable things that are like definitely actually happened. But the interesting part to me is how they're all related, like what caused the next thing and how we got certain analyses from the evidence that we had. So for me, the story part of it is the part that keeps me invested.
Yeah. The first American female serial killer. I got to tell you, I had no clue. I really had no clue.
I didn't either. And then I heard her story and I was like, well, there's more to that than they're saying on this show. So I had to go deep dive for that. And then that's, you know, ultimately the story that I wrote my book about, because there was so much, it was action-packed with issues. And yes, it was hard to research because it was so long ago. But also, like, when I heard the story originally, I was like, that sounds very interesting. I need to go read that book. And then there wasn't really a book. So I had to write it.
Wow. See, and as a writer and a producer, I sit here and I have to wonder, how long does it take to create an episode, first of all? And the next part of that question would be, how many people are involved in creating each episode? You're not just focused on one story here. You've got a lot of stuff here.
Right. So the answer is forever. It takes a long time because we want to get the story right. And yes, you're right. The more, for me at least, the more, you know, eyes are on it, the more people who are invested in it, who have the same mission. Like, what is that metaphor they use? Like, everyone's in the same boat and rowing in the same direction. I think the story gets better the more people the finished product, not necessarily the story. The story itself doesn't really change, but we want to make sure that we're presenting it in the best way. So there's at least 5 of us on every episode. The researching is definitely the part that, for me, takes the longest, because you want to make sure you get it right. You don't want to get any details wrong or miss them, important things like dates, and also getting people's names right, which sounds like obvious, but sometimes they're working under like aliases or pseudonyms, so making sure it's consistent. Definitely the researching is the longest. We'd like to do, this isn't always the way it shakes out, but most of the time we like to have the book on the topic, and then almost do like a book report, but then with a lot of supplementary resources as well. And in the best cases, we get to do an interview with the expert at the end, so that anything that wasn't clear when we were researching, I get to ask them. So we get like a really full picture or as full as it can be. Yeah, that's a great question. Thank you for asking that.
Well, what it is that, to me, that's part of the attraction when you bring in the expert, because, you know, as people who research, we go in there, and the thing is that we're getting our own personal interpretation. Did we get it right? Now bring in the expert and find out how close we were to getting it right.
Yes. So I definitely agree. And one of the things that stood out to me where I was like, I cannot wait to ask him this in the interview is, I believe it's Amy Archer Gilligan. There was a doctor who was, she was a poisoner, and he would, every time she brought in a body for an autopsy, he would be like, oh, it's heart failure, or it was a stroke, or, something like that. And in the book, it never said that he was an accomplice. Oh. And so I was like, well, he definitely knew. Like, there's no way he didn't know. And then that was like the first question I asked the author, and he was like, yeah, he definitely knew. He just never said it. He just never said that that he was in on it, but he was, and I knew it. But that was a fun way to end it. Yep.
When you put these stories together, how do they come to you? Because does it come into your creative process? Do you go looking for it? Because the way that you present the greatest true crime stories ever told is it's almost like you have been chosen in this moment of now to share this story, and instead of just going, okay, I'm going to hit Google, now I'm going to go read this newspaper, I'm going to go get this book. It really feels like that you've been chosen.
Thank you. That's exactly what we're going for. Is these are the best ones. And to be fair, we're not just going through a Google search and being like, oh, this one sounds interesting, let's do that. There definitely has to be a big base of research that we can draw from, so that we do get a very full picture of the story or full narrative of the story. A lot of them, we have a huge list that we collaborate on and add to, and then we kind of pick the ones that are speaking to us the most at the time, which I think is a really effective way of doing it, because sometimes some things hit and then later you're like, I'm not interested in that anymore. So it's really nice that we can strike while the iron is hot, and we have a big pool to draw from as well. And there's so many stories that deserve to be told that I hope that we get to tell more of.
So now, is it like a true editing room in the way that, okay, I see that you've got this catfish killer story, go get me some sound? Is that the way that it's worked on the team?
I feel like it's more of a writing process than in an editing room. At least that's been my experience of it, where we'll talk about these are the narrative points that we want to make sure to hit. These are the things that we want to bring to the forefront that maybe if you've heard the story before, this is a new element that we need to make sure to emphasize. And then, of course, after we draft each episode in writing, it goes back and forth 3 or 4 times to make sure it's, actually readable, that we're getting all the important information out, and that the beats are right. You want to make sure that it reads like a narrative. Mm-hmm. It should almost feel like you're hearing fiction, even though it's true, because those are the elements that work when you're hearing a story. So I would say it's more like a writing process.
Yeah. Oh, that's how podcasting started. It was the writers that found a stage where their voices could be, and it was back in the 1980s. So to hear you talk about writing the way you do, it's like, yes, this is exactly what's supposed to be happening here.
Good. Yeah, whenever someone is like, so you just, I feel like people who aren't writers don't realize how much happens before you actually put pen to paper or put your, you actually start drafting the thing you will read or that someone will read. And I think most of the work comes before that, with the research and the outlining and the organizing and the fact checking and the supplementary research and all of that. So I'm glad that sounds like it's supposed to, because that's, I don't know another way, honestly.
Yeah. So the writing voice in your head, does it match the writing voice on the podcast?
I think for the most part, sometimes it doesn't come out exactly the way that you would speak it, so we end up editing that. Like if it's a really long, wordy sentence that I can say in my head but don't have enough breath to do aloud, then we'll end up editing, line editing that way. But generally, I think it's pretty consistent. I like to be authentic. Sometimes I have to edit back some of my swearing, because it is just so, such a... you're reading these stories about terrible, the worst things that people can do to each other, and it's hard not to swear sometimes. So we try to cut those back, and use our words instead. But yeah.
Yeah, I'm glad that you brought up the part about, what it does to you inside the head. How do you defrag then? Because I know I've had some very serious conversations where it's like, oh my God, I can't even breathe. And you got to go for a walk through the forest. You got to write. You got to do something. How do you handle all of this? Oh my God, blood and guts. And then you got to go live life.
Right. Oh, yeah. I've gotten a lot better about that lately, especially because these are like short forms. But when I was writing the book, especially, like I would come out of, the gargoyle position of writing at a desk and just go into the rest of the house. And my friends would be like, what's wrong? And I was like, 15 people just died. It's hard, to deal with. So taking frequent breaks is good for me, with rewarding yourself with snacks. Watching like 20-minute sitcoms every now and then, like Parks and Rec is a good palate cleanser. Just to, give your brain a break so you're not just living in that terrible dark space. And then I think too, approaching it from not necessarily, I guess when you're writing about it as facts, you can be a little more objective and approach it analytically. That is very helpful too. But it's also like a fine line, and I'm gonna step over every once in a while, so that you kind of feel it. But yeah, I think just having those coping skills, exercising helps. Getting around people who are fun. Great question.
What kind of courage did Eunice Hutton have in order to take on the mob the way that she did? Because this was very interesting, and it was very engaging.
Thank you. That's my favorite story that we've done so far, because it was just so surprising to me. You're right. She's so brave. She, if our listeners are unfamiliar, she, Black woman in the 1930s in Harlem, also a lawyer. The thing that got the moment on her resume that got her eventually selected for the Luciano trial to be on that team was that she helped, I believe it was LaGuardia, investigate the Harlem riots earlier in the 1930s. And they saw that she did a great job and was very objective and a very hard worker. Which is also brave, because, you're in this case, right? You're Lucky Luciano is like one of the most famous gangsters in America, and you're dealing with him, who is an organized criminal or syndicate, and the government at the time was very corrupt as well. So you're walking like a really fine line between these two sets of bullies and murderers. So that alone, I think, is very brave. And then also she was the only woman and the only Black person on this team of 12 people selected by a district attorney, Thomas Dewey. So that too. And then she ended up getting, I say she got stuck on a hotline, like taking tips from anyone who wanted to call. I don't know that that's how she would have looked at it necessarily, but to me, it's like, what do you mean you stuck her in this corner office? Like, why'd you do that? And then it turned out to be like the best move possible, because women are more comfortable talking to other women. So she had a lot of people who were involved in sex work or lived next door to like pop-up brothels, who would call in and complain about it. And they, she's not telling anyone about them. It was not a vice unit, right? So she's not prosecuting based, on things like prostitution. But it's still like you're dealing with a lot of criminals, like on a regular basis. So I think that was a really brave move too. And then of course she's the one who eventually composed the data to bring him down in court on the case of running, or I don't even know how they phrased it, but basically exploiting hundreds of women on a regular basis is what. And he was the first gangster to not get taken in on tax evasion too, which I think is pretty amazing.
See, this is every bit the reason why I say that you've been called to do this, because these are stories that have been lost in history. And I just picture the spirits of all of these people that you feature standing next to you while you're writing, going, that's how it happened. That's how it happened. Hey, Mary Kay, can you write about me next time? Hey, write about me. It's just, you're just so open to share stories that are long gone and forgotten, but not anymore.
Thank you for saying that. That's how I hope that they're looking at me. And sometimes when I'm writing about the criminals and I'm trying to be honest, I feel like they'd be like, leave that out. No, don't say that, girl. Like, they'll be standing over my shoulder being like, no, don't tell them that. But I think, it's always fun when you get to and you get a white hat to talk about too.
Wow. You got to come back to this show anytime in the future. The door is always going to be open for you.
Thank you. I'd love to come back. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. You be brilliant today, okay?
Thank you. You too. It was great talking to you, Arrow.